sale.
An American car.
Yes, that's the one. How much are you asking?
1100.
I see. It does look just the job, but I'm afraid I don't like that price very much.
I didn't like it when I bought it.
Now, when can we meet?
How about tomorrow night?
No, I don't think I can make that. No, I can't, and I'm going to Liverpool on Sunday. I was wondering, I don't suppose you could come round to my house this evening?
Where is it?
Maida Vale. I'd call on you, only I've twisted my knee rather badly.
Oh, I'm sorry. What's your address?
61A Charrington Gardens.
Harrison?
No, Charrington.
Cherry.
Yes, turn left at the underground. It's 2 minutes walk.
I'll be there in about an hour.
About an hour. That's so good of you. Oh, by the way, will you be bringing the car?
I'm afraid I can't. Because it's been...
Oh, that's all right. I've had a good look at it. But if you bring the passbook and the papers, I don't see why we couldn't set this up tonight.
Of course.
Providing you proper prices sufficiently.
I'm afraid that's quite out of the question.
Well, we'll see what a couple of drinks can do. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Captain Lesgate.
And begin. Nicholas, are ever up?
Mr. Fisher?
Yes, Captain Lesgate.
Yes.
This is so good of you. Do come in. Let me have your coat. Have any trouble finding the place?
None at all.
Do sit down.
Thank you.
Now, how about a drink?
You know, I can't help but thinking I've seen you somewhere before.
Funny you should say that. The moment I opened the door, Wait a minute. Lesgate. You're not Lesgate. Swan. C.J. Swan. Or was it C.A.?
C.A., I say you've got a better memory than I have. Fisher, when did we meet?
Weren't you at Cambridge?
Yes.
Must be 20 years ago. You wouldn't remember me. I only came your last year.
Well, this is a coincidence.
Ah, well, this calls for a special drink. I was planning to palm you off with an indifferent port. But let's see what we've got here, shall we? Ooh, how about this?
Perfect. By the way, how did you know my car was for sale?
Your garage told me.
That's odd. I don't recall mentioning it to anyone there.
Yes, I stopped in for a fill-up. I happened to mention I was looking for an American car, and they gave me your number. I said, it is for sale, isn't it?
Well, of course.
Oh, good. But I refuse to discuss price until you've had at least 3 brandies.
I warn you, I drive a hard bargain drunk also.
So do I.
You know, I swear I must have seen you somewhere since Cambridge.
Ever been to Wimbledon?
Wendy's. That's it, Tony Wendy's. Then what's all this about Fisher?
What's all this about Lesgate? Do you like a cigar?
I'll stick to this pipe if you don't mind.
Oh. Well, that's one habit you've changed. Yes, I remember back at school, you always used to smoke rather expensive cigars. Wait a minute. Oh, I think I've got a photograph of you here somewhere. Let's see. Yes. Yes, look, here's a photo taken at an old reunion dinner. Well, there you are on the right, smoking the biggest cigar in the business.
That was the first and last reunion I ever went to. What a murderous thug I look.
Yes, you do, rather. Of course, I always remember you because of the college ball. You were the, treasurer.
Honorary treasurer. I used to organize the beastly things.
Yes, I remember some of the ticket money was stolen.
Yes, nearly £100. I left the cash box in my back study, and when I went to sleep, in the morning, the money was gone. Still makes me sweat to think about it.
It was the college porter, of course.
Yes, poor old Alfred. Never could back a winner. They found the cash box in his back garden.
But not the money.
Good Lord, 20 years!
What are you doing nowadays?
I work in property. I say, I don't follow tennis very closely. Did you play Wimbledon this year?
Oh, no. I've given up tennis. Or rather, tennis has given me up. Oh, I've had a good run for my money, though. I went around the world 3 times. Oh.
I imagine you were treated like a film star.
No, film stars get paid.
There's that.
I managed to save a little on expenses. In about 7 years, I put away just over £1,000. Not much compared with your film stars.
What are you doing now? Making up for lost time?
I sell sports equipment. Not very lucrative, but it gives me plenty of spare time.
Well, I'm here to tell you, you managed to run a very comfortable place.
Well, my wife has some money of her own. Otherwise, I should hardly feel like blowing £1,000 on your car.
1,100. Yes, people with capital don't realize how fortunate they are. I've already resigned into getting by on what I can earn.
Of course, you could still marry for money.
Yes, I suppose there are those who make a business of that.
I know I did.
You mean that the woman you fell in love with had some money of her own?
No. No, I always intended to marry for money. I had to. Whilst I was in first-class tennis, I met wealthy people all over the world. So I decided to snap up the first chance I got. I nearly married a tubby Boston Deb worth $5 million. It got as far as pictures in the papers. Until she threw me over for an heir to a chain of grocery stores. Funny how they all stick together. No, I decided to settle for a good deal less, a lot more easily. My wife had been a fan of mine for some time.
Well, that's putting it rather bluntly.
Have I shocked you?
No. I always admire a man who knows what he wants.
To know what he wants to pay for. That's the thing. Everything has its price. So many people fail nowadays because they want to buy cheap. I've learned to pay a big price for anything I really want. I usually get it.
Yes, I'm sure you do. I haven't a great deal of time.
I was telling you about my wife. She got her money from her late aunt, who got it from her late husband, who got it from his first wife. Of course, a good chunk gets locked off every time somebody dies, but a good deal has managed to filter through.
Well, you say you married her for money. Why do you suppose she married you?
I was a tennis star. She never would have married a commercial salesman.
But you've given up tennis. She hasn't left you yet.
She nearly did.
Let me, Wendus. You've got a groggy knee.
Oh, thanks, old boy. Let's just have the bottle over here, shall we?
Good idea.
Would you like to hear about it?
Hear what?
About my wife. How she nearly left me.
It's your privilege. You're the host.
Well, to be frank, I think you may be able to help. Just man-to-man advice, you know.
I am at your service.
When first we were married, I used to play in the various championships, and Margot used to travel around with me. I think she found it all a bit much. A hospitality outside of this country can be pretty exhausting. When we got back, she pleaded with me to give up tennis and play husband instead. In the end, we compromised. I went alone to America for the grass court seasons, and she stayed here. After the championships, I returned, but I soon realized that things had changed. For starters, she wasn't in love with me anymore. There were phone calls that would end abruptly if I happened to walk in, and there was an old school friend that she suddenly would visit from time to time. And then one day we had a row. I wanted to play in a covered court tournament, and as usual, she didn't want me to go. I was in the bedroom. The phone rang. It all sounded a bit urgent. After that, she seemed rather keen that I should play in that tournament after all. So I packed my kit into the car and I drove off. I parked my car 2 streets away and walked back on my tracks. 10 minutes later, she came out of this house and took a taxi. I took another. Her old school friend lived in a studio in Chelsea. I could see them through the studio window as he cooked spaghetti over a gas ring. They didn't say much. They just looked very natural together. Funny how you can tell when people are in love. After that, I started to walk. I began to wonder what would happen if she left me. I'd have to find a way of earning a living to begin with. Suddenly I realized just how much I'd grown to depend upon her. All these expensive tastes I'd acquired while I was at the top. And now first-class tennis had finished with me, and so apparently had my wife. I don't remember ever being so scared. I dropped into a pub for a drink. As I sat in the corner, I thought of, well, all sorts of things. I thought of 3 different ways of killing him. I even thought of killing her. That seemed a far more sensible idea. And just as I was working out exactly how I could do it, I suddenly saw something which completely changed my mind. I didn't go to that tournament after all. When I got back that night, she was sitting exactly where you are now. I told her I decided to give up tennis and to play husband instead. Well, as it turns out, I needn't have got so worked up after all. Apparently, that spaghetti evening had been a sort of, a fond farewell. The boyfriend had been called back to New York.
An American.
Yes. There were long letters from there. They usually arrived on Thursdays. She burnt all of them Except one. That one she used to transfer from handbag to handbag. It was always with her. That letter became an obsession with me. I had to find out what was in it. And finally, I did. That letter made for very interesting reading.
You mean you stole it?
Yes. I even wrote her 2 anonymous notes offering to sell it back.
Why?
Oh, because, well, I was hoping that would make her come and tell me all about it. But it didn't. So I've kept the letter. Oh,
Why are you telling me all of this?
because you're the only person that I can trust. Anyway, that must have put the fear of God into them because the letter stopped, and we lived happily ever after. Funny to think that just a year ago, I was sitting in that Knightsbridge pub, actually planning to murder her. And I might have done, had I not seen something that completely changed my mind.
What did you see?
I saw you.
What's so odd about that?
The coincidence. You see, just a week before, I'd been to a reunion dinner, and the fellas had been talking about you. About how you'd been court-martialed during the war, and, spent a year in prison? Well, that was news. Mind you, at college, we always used to say Old Swan would end up in jail. That cash box, I suppose.
What about it?
Oh, my dear fellow. Everybody knew you took that money. Poor old Alfred.
Well, thanks for the drink. Interesting hearing about your matrimonial affairs. I take it you won't be wanting that car after all.
Don't you want me to tell you why I brought you here?
Yes, I think you better.
It was when I saw you in that pub that everything became quite clear. Just a few months before, Margot and I had made out our wills. Quite short affairs, leaving everything we had to each other in case of accidents. Hers worked over to just over £90,000. Investments, mostly, but all a little too easy to get at, and that was dangerous, as they'd be bound to suspect me. I needed an alibi, a good one, and then I sold you. I'd often wondered what happened to people when they came out of prison. People like you, I mean. Can they find a job? Do old friends rally round? Suppose they've never had any friends. I was so curious to know that I followed you. I followed you home that night, and, well, would you mind passing your glass? Thank you. And I've been following you ever since.
Why?
Well, I was hoping that sooner or later I might catch you at something and be able to...
Blackmail me.
Influence you. After a while, I got to know your routine, which made things a lot easier.
Rather dull.
At first, yes. But you know how it is. When you take up a new hobby, the more you find out about it, the more fascinating it becomes. You became quite fascinating. You always went dog racing on Mondays and Thursdays. Oh, I even took it up myself, just to be near you. You had changed your name to Adams.
I got bold with Swan. Any crime in that?
No, none. Then you... Oh, and you always used to eat at that little club. It had a funny name. What was it? Oh yes, the Kettle of Fish. The police closed it down recently, I believe. Someone was caught taking drugs or something.
I wouldn't know about that. I only went there to eat. There's no crime in that either.
None whatsoever. In fact, there was nothing really illegal about you. I began to get quite discouraged. And then one day, you disappeared from your lodgings. So I phoned your landlady. I said, Mr. Adams owed me £5. Well, apparently that was nothing. It seems Mr. Adams owed her 6 weeks' rent, and her best lodger £55. And Mr. Adams had always been such a nice gentleman. That's what seemed to upset her the most.
Yes. That's what always upsets them the most.
Oh, I say, old boy, if you want another drink, would you mind putting on these gloves? Thanks. Now, where were we? Oh, yes, I'd lost you. And then I found you one day at dog racing, where I then tailed you home to your new address in Carlisle Court. Mr. Adams had become Mr. Wilson.
This is all most fascinating. Do go on.
Mr. Wilson disappeared from those lodgings last July, owing 15 weeks' rent, and somewhat richer for his brief encounter with a Miss Wallace. You used to go out with Miss Wallace on Sundays and Wednesdays. She certainly was in love with you, wasn't she? I suppose she thought you were growing that handsome mustache to please her. Poor Miss Wallace. Do continue. July, August, September. 127. I already said Carlisle Court, but I'll have to say it again. I'll have to pick it up. 127 Carlisle Court. Occupant, a Mrs. Van Dorn. Mrs. Van Dorn's late husband left her 2 hotels and a large apartment house fully furnished. What a base to operate from, Captain Lesgate. The only trouble is, Mrs. Van Dorn does so rather enjoy being courted, and she is so very expensive. Perhaps that's why you've been trying to sell her car for over a month.
Mrs. Van Dorn asked me to sell it for her.
I know. I called her up just before you arrived. She only wanted 800.
Where's the nearest police station?
Just opposite the church, 2 minutes walk.
Suppose I walk there now.
What would you tell them?
Everything.
Everything? All about Mr. Adams and Mr. Wilson?
I shall simply tell them that you are trying to blackmail me
Into?
murdering your wife.
I rather wish you would. When she heard that, we'd have the biggest laugh of our lives.
You've forgotten something.
Have I?
You've told me a few things here tonight.
What of it?
Suppose I tell them how you followed them to that apartment in Chelsea. How you watched them cooking spaghetti, all that rubbish. Wouldn't that ring a bell?
Well, it certainly would. They'd naturally assume you followed her there yourself.
Me? Why should I?
Why should you steal her handbag? Why should you write her those blackmail notes? Can you prove that you didn't? You certainly can't prove I did. It would be a straight case of your word against mine.
That ought to confuse them. What could you say?
I should simply tell them that you came here tonight, half drunk, wanting to borrow money on the strength that we were at college together. When I refused, you started saying something about a letter belonging to my wife. As far as I could make out, you were offering to sell it back. I gave you what little money I had, and you gave me the letter. It has your fingerprints on it. Remember? I shall then say that you threatened that if I went to the police, that you would tell them some fool story about my wanting you to murder my wife. But Before we go on, old chap, do consider the inconvenience. You see, I am quite well known, and there would be pictures of you as well. Sooner or later, a deputation of lodgers and landladies would come forth to testify to your character. And someone is certain to have seen you with Miss Wallace. I did notice you were always careful not to be seen with Miss Wallace. Always took her to out-of-the-way places where you wouldn't be recognized. Like that little tea shop on Pimlico.
That was her idea, not mine.
Yes, it was a bit crummy, wasn't it? Hardly a place to take Mrs. Van Dorn. Oh, by the way, you were planning on marrying Mrs. Van Dorn, were you not?
Smart, aren't you?
No, not really. I just had time to think things out. Put myself in your position. And that's why I know you're going to agree.
What makes you think I'll agree?
For the same reason that a donkey with a stick behind him and a carrot in front goes forwards and not backwards.
Tell me about the carrot.
£1,000 cash.
For a murder!
For a few minutes' work, that's all it is. And very little risk, I guarantee. Now that ought to appeal to you, since you've been skating on rather thin ice.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, you should know. It was in all the papers. A middle-aged woman found dead due to an overdose of cocaine. Seems she'd been taking this stuff for quite some time, but no one knows where she got it. But we know, don't we? Poor Miss Wallace. Yes, you should take a long holiday abroad. I think you'll find that a honeymoon with Mrs. Van Dorn would be quite preferable to 10 years detention at Dartmoor. My £1,000 should see you safely married to her. You'll find it makes quite a difference to have some money in the family.
This £1,000, where is it?
It's in an attaché case in a check room.
Where?
Somewhere in London. Of course, we don't meet again. Once you've, delivered the goods, I shall mail you the key to the case and the check room ticket. You can take this £1,000 on account.
Honor.
The
It's
police.
inflation. You can take this £100 on account.
The police would only have to trace one of these notes back to you, and they would hang us both with the same rope.
They won't. For a whole year, I've been cashing an extra £20 a week, all in fivers. I then changed them for these at my leisure.
Let me see your bank statement.
Of course. Don't touch.
Turn back the page. Your balance has decreased by £1,000 over the last year. Suppose the police ask about that.
I go dog racing twice a week.
They'll check with your bookmaker.
Like you, I always bet on the tote. Satisfied?
When would this take place?
Tomorrow night.
Tomorrow! Not a chance. I've got to think this over.
But it's got to be tomorrow. I've arranged things that way.
Where?
Approximately where you're standing now.
How?
Tomorrow night, Halliday, that's the American boyfriend, and I will go to a stag party just down the road. Margot will remain here. She'll go to bed early and listen to Saturday Night Theatre on the radio. She always does when I'm out. At exactly 23 minutes to 11, you will enter this house by the street door. You'll find the key to this door. Under the stair carpet, here.
The 5th step.
That's the one. You will come straight to the window and hide behind the curtains. At 20 minutes to 11, I shall go to the phone in the hotel to call my boss. I shall dial the wrong number. This number. When she gets up to answer the phone, you'll see the light come on under the bedroom door. When she opens the door, the light will spill across the floor, so don't move until she answers the phone. There must be as little noise as possible. When it's done, pick up the phone and give me a soft then hang up. Don't speak, whatever you do. I shan't say a word. When I've got your signal, I shall hang up and redial the correct number this time, and then speak to my boss as if nothing has happened.
What happens then? Go on!
You'll find this suitcase here. It will contain some clothes of mine for the cleaners. Open it, tip the clothes out onto the floor, and then fill it with the antique cigarette box in these cups here. Do not snap the locks. And leave it just as it is now.
As if I left in a hurry.
That's the idea. Now, the window. If it's closed, open it and leave it open. And then go out exactly the way you came in.
By this door.
Yes, and here's the most important thing. Here's the most important thing. On your way out, put the key back exactly where you found it.
Under the stair carpet.
Yes.
What exactly is supposed to have happened here?
Oh. They'll assume you broke in through these windows, thinking the apartment empty. You took the suitcase and went to work. When she heard the noise, she turned on the light. When you saw it under the bedroom door, you hid behind the curtains. When she came in here, you attacked her before she could scream. When you realized you'd actually killed her, you bolted into the garden, leaving your loot behind.
I'm supposed to have entered by the window. What if the window had been locked?
Jump,
Jump.
as if I left in a hurry.
Oh, as if I left it. No, that was a long time ago.
The street door.
The street.
Street door, yes, street.
Okay, okay. That's what I took. Okay. Okay. I leave the flat by this door, putting the key back into the stair carpet, and then leaving by the street door. What if the street door had been locked?
The street door is never locked.
Are you sure about this? No. Yeah, we're not. You jumping. I was supposed to do the garden
Well,
first.
shut up, then.
See, I was right. You're right. The narrator was wrong. Okay, we got it.
He doesn't have to have it memorized.
I know, but I did. I was right. So we're going back because I was doing it right. Yes, I'm supposed to have entered by the window. What if the window had been locked?
That's not the line.
Yeah. It wouldn't matter. That's when you start.
Oh shit, okay, I'm sorry.
You were right. You got screwed up by now. I was supposed to have entered by the window. What if the window had been locked?
It wouldn't matter. You see, she often takes a walk around the garden before she goes to bed. And she often forgets to lock up afterwards. That's what I shall tell the police.
But she may say that.
She isn't going to say anything.
Is there any
Is
reason?
she?
Is there any reason why I shouldn't leave by the garden?
Yes, you'd have to climb an iron gate. If you were spotted, you could be followed.
Okay, I leave the flat by this door, putting the key back under the stair carpet, and going out by the street door. What if the street door had been locked? How would I have gotten in the first place?
The street door is never locked.
What time will you return?
Around 12. I shall bring Halliday back for a nightcap, so we shall find her together. And we will have been together ever since we left her. And there's my alibi.
You're forgetting something.
Oh, am I?
When you return with this Halliday, how will you get into the apartment?
I shall let myself in.
But your key will be under the stair carpet, and when you take it out, he's bound to see you, and that will give the whole thing away.
No! It won't be my key under the stair carpet. It will be hers. I shall take it out of her handbag before I leave and place it out there. Then, when we get back, while Halliday is searching the garden or something, I shall put it back in her handbag before the police arrive.
How many keys are there to this door?
Just hers and mine. Mayvale 0407. Oh, hello, darling. How's it going? Oh, I'm so sorry. I mean, I'm glad.
How are you?
Oh, very sleepy. I've just made myself some coffee to try and stay awake. Oh, hold on a moment, darling. I think there's somebody at the door. Careful. You can be seen from the bedroom window. Sorry, darling, my mistake.
You better join us, won't you?
Oh, I'm afraid not. I hardly seem to have started.
Oh, Tony. It's better than to work out, doesn't it?
We will manage it one day.
I say, darling,
Yes?
it seems odd to me, but would you mind if Max and I went somewhere afterwards?
Of course. What do you want to do? Dance?
Oh,
Take him to Jerry's.
how would you think?
Just mention my name. I'm not sure about the band, but the food's good. Oh, darling, Maureen rang up just after you left. Wants us to go to dinner on Wednesday night. You've got something written in your diary here, but I can't read your writing. It says something about Al Bental? Who's he? Another of your boyfriends?
Albert Hall, you idiot.
Oh, Albert Hall, of course, of course. Oh, thank heavens we can't go to Maureen. She's such a filthy